Yeah, it's 179 that has 1 row squares for 1 row of knitting. And this is single bed, so it's not on our sample. You can do it using both beds. Okay. Okay, you can use both beds for that, or just one bed. So here, I have done this swatch separately. This is 176. So this is 2 rows for every 1 row of the pattern. And here is 179. This is 1 row for every 1 row of the pattern. So you can see this is half the height of this. You can see on the back, you have these floats. And you can tack them down with some thread, some thinner yarn, or crochet up and then secure them. There's alternate management methods. So this, I've done a ladder back jacquard. It's not double bed jacquard, ladder back jacquard instead of just pure. The other swatch is all double bed jacquard. So this is a ladder back. So these are going up in ladders. Here is 1 stitch every row. Here is alternating. So only 1 color on each of these. So it secures them. So it looks pretty neat. It curves in just a little bit, and when you stretch it, you can see through here. So you can manage which color is behind which. So I just did 1 color here, but you could alternate them. You could have them go in alternate colors and not get this effect so much. Or you can actually put 1 next to each other. So you'd have both colors, 1 right next to each other, and alternate, do bird's eye-ish pattern, but just leave big gaps in between. So why would you even do one of these as opposed to this? Well, you can see that there's a lot less bulk. Here, it's thinner. So if you're using a thin fabric, it doesn't really matter so much. But if you're using a thicker fabric, you don't want to have too much bulk if you don't need it. So it also gives you a different look. Like this, I like this traditional 1 row for each. You know, the floats are a problem. Another thing you can do instead of doing these float management techniques is to pick a pattern where you don't have stretches of 5 or more stitches in a row. So if you the basic rule for hand knitting is if you have 5 stitches, you want to secure the float. 5 stitches where it's not active. So these have, what is this, 8, 9 stitches? So that's like double what you would want. So you can go to a traditional Fair Isle pattern. Now Fair Isles are traditional patterns. This is really stranded. It's not technically Fair Isle because it's not the traditional patterns. You have to secure it. Traditional Fair Isle, you don't have to secure it. Yeah, so the Fair Isle patterns, you know, those small repeats, traditional patterns, not just pictures. This is stranded work. Double bed jacquard, ladder back jacquard, stranded, because there was all these strands. So, not technically Fair Isle, but it's Fair Isle style. It's Fair Isle like. It's called Fair Isle, but if you have one of the traditional patterns, you're not going to have the runs of 5 or more stitches. So that's what you could do, those traditional patterns, and not have to do any float management. So another advantage of having this float management is it gives you more stretch. So it gives you some stretch, and without really distorting the picture on the front. So there are these long runs right here. So what tends to happen is these stitches tend to really come out and be distorted. So right now they're shrunk again, but they can come and become distorted because they have all this slack and they're just going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you do some float management, then you don't have those really distorting it. So you try to minimize the look of these ladders or these runs on the back. You can't tell too much. I mean, I can tell, but yeah, I'm in person here and I can touch it. Okay, and to do this swatch for single bed, I would suggest casting on for ribbing and doing a few rows of ribbing, and then put all the stitches on one bed, and then do it exactly like we did for the double bed, going through with one pattern and changing the numbers each time. The technique number. So here I just did 176, and then this rest of this is 179, and I just changed the pushers on the back bed every so often. So no pushers, nothing on the back bed, and then I just changed the pushers in this sequence. I just had stripes, one every row. And so this gets really tight in here. I don't really like the look of that. It really pulls it in. I don't like that one too much. Now, so I'd say my favorite is this, but only with patterns that you have less than 5 stitches in a row. Okay, so you can play around with different combinations of floats on the back. I'm still playing around with that and have more options to try. And so similarly, on these double bed patterns, you can change up what's happening on the back. So these are all recommended patterns. So the same thing is happening on the front for all of them except for this one, which is doing tucks on the front. So this one's KX. I think all the other ones are LX. LX, LX, 180, 181. LX, 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 LX. K, L, L, L. Let me get between these here. L, L. And they're all 2 rows from 1 row of the pattern. So all these technique numbers, they're just, except for the KX one, is telling you what you're doing on the back and just recommended patterns. So you can change these up. You could do 2 in a row. You could do 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. You could do 3. You could do 3 pieces of stripes. You can just change all those up, and you know, change the pushers on the change the settings on the back. There's definitely more combinations available. And there's the KX on the front one, and it says N on the back. I mean, you could make this even bigger by doing, you know, AX on the back with some pushers or something, and make it even stretchier. Might turn out pretty stretchy, but you know, that's just things you can test out. You can play around with all these settings. Okay, so happy knitting. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe.